Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes before beginning this home learning program. You're visiting Morro Bay State Park currently. Just give you a little view on the top right corner. It is a beautiful day here. Very few clouds, a slight breeze, but still warm. Okay, I'm going to show you a view of what I'm looking at. We have really nice weather this morning. And we are looking out at the estuary. An estuary is where fresh water and salt water mix and meet. Creates a unique environment. Hi, it's about 10 a.m. My name is Mariana Perez, and I am a park interpreter specialist for California State Parks. I hope everyone is having a beautiful morning. Like I said earlier, it's beautiful here in Morro Bay. We're looking at the estuary right behind me. This is a home to many different plants and animals. It's a little bit breezy, so I'm going to use my loud voice so you can hear me. I'm super excited to be here with everyone and share some of my knowledge about the wildlife here in Morro Bay State Park. I'll begin in just about 1 minute. So hopefully more participants can tune in to this home learning program. Okay, let's get started. Again, my name is Mariana Perez, and I'm a park interpreter specialist for California State Parks. I'm super excited to be here. I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy during these challenging times. I know it's difficult to get out, but this is our way of bringing parks to your homes. Hope everyone's having a great morning. Well, today you are visiting Morro Bay State Park. Morro Bay is located on the central coast of California, about 4 hours south of San Francisco and 4 hours north of Los Angeles. And Morro Bay is home to many different types of endangered and threatened species, and people all over the world come to visit Morro Bay because of its diversity. That means that there's many different types of plants and animals that call Morro Bay home. but most of those animals are birds. Birds that you can see in the trees, on land, and in the ocean. And those birds that we see in the ocean are what we call seabirds. And we're going to be talking about seabirds today. I'm really excited to go over some of those awesome, cool characteristics. But I want to get to know who is watching this video and kind of orient you to the features on your screen. So if you see the raised hand button, can you please raise your hand for me? Awesome. Thank you. You can put your hands down now. All right. How many third graders do I have out there? Raise your hand if you are a third grader. Woo! Quite a few third graders. All right, thank you. You can put your hands down, third graders. How about fourth graders? Raise your hand if you are a fourth grader. Cool. All right. You can lower your hands now, fourth graders. And now if you're a fifth grader, raise your hand. Awesome. Have a few fifth graders out there. You can lower your hands now. Now, do I have anyone else in the audience who is not in third, fourth, fifth grader? If you are not in those grades, please raise your hand. Nice. That's awesome. I'm super excited that you're all here tuning in to today's webinar through the PORTS program. Super excited to be here and share some of my knowledge again about those ocean birds that we call seabirds. Get it? Because they're from the sea and they're birds, seabirds. I think it's pretty funny. All right. So some of you might not know what seabirds are, but maybe you've seen a few of them. Raise your hand if you recognize this bird. Nice. Okay. Raise your hand if you recognize this bird. Well, a lot of you know what this bird is. That's awesome. So these birds are seabirds. You already know some types of seabirds. The first picture was of a brown pelican, and these are your penguins. Nice job. That's really cool. You already know some seabirds. Well, what is a seabird? A seabird is a bird that primarily makes its living from the ocean. Now, there are a lot of birds that use the ocean, but their major food source does not come from the ocean like seabirds. Seabirds find their food in the ocean. And that is a really important characteristic of what makes those type of birds seabirds. And seabirds can be found hundreds and even thousands of miles away from land. That's really far. They can be there for a really long time. They are master pilots of the sky. And sometimes they come to land for a couple of reasons, and we will learn about that later on in the program. So we have a better idea of what a seabird is. Let's learn how these seabirds survive in their marine environment, in their ocean environment. They have a few adaptations. Does anyone know what an adaptation is? Raise your hand if you know what an adaptation means. Okay. Well, an adaptation is something an animal has or does that gives them an advantage to living in their environment. So seabirds have a few physical adaptations, meaning body parts, and behavioral adaptations, things that they do to help them survive in the ocean or the time that they spend out at sea. And we are going to learn about those awesome different adaptations that they have. And some of those adaptations are so distinct that if you see it on a bird, you're going to be like, I know that that is a seabird. So before we get started on that, I want you to take a look at this seabird. This seabird is not found in Morro Bay, but I think it's really cool, and so I wanted to share a picture of it. These are Atlantic puffins, and I want you to take a moment to look at these seabirds and make some observations. What type of body parts do you see that might help this bird live in the ocean? Keep those observations in your mind as we go through the presentation. I might be covering those. Nice. Now that you've had some time to look at this awesome seabird, the Atlantic puffin, let's get into some of those physical adaptations that give them an advantage to living out at sea. Well, seabirds have a really important body part that all birds have, and that is feathers. Seabirds don't have fur or hair like other mammals or like us. They have feathers. But seabirds have more feathers than typical land birds. They have extra feathers. Those extra feathers help with waterproofing, meaning that water runs right off those feathers instead of getting absorbed. And those extra feathers help with keeping them warm in the chilly environment. Spending time out at sea would be very cold. I get cold just being near the ocean, so I can't imagine how cold their environment can be when they're out at sea. So those extra feathers help with keeping them warm. Some birds that live in extreme cold temperatures, like maybe the Antarctic, have even more feathers. They have extra feathers to help them keep them warm. A lot of those birds even have specialized feathers to help them keep afloat when they're in the water, like penguins. Like one of those pictures that a lot of you recognized. Penguins have a lot of feathers and they're specialized to help them keep them afloat when they're in the water. So that's a really cool physical adaptation that seabirds have. But that's not the only thing that is special to their feathers. Most seabirds have a color pattern that is unique to them. And that color pattern is this. They tend to have dark feathers above and light feathers below. This is a picture of an albatross, and an albatross can be seen in Morro Bay, but it's not very common. They're beautiful birds and they are pretty big. But see from this picture that you can see the dark feathers above and the light feathers below. Why might you think they have that color pattern? Do you know of any other animals that might have that color pattern? I'm thinking, Well, that color pattern helps them camouflage with their environment. The dark feathers above help them blend in to the dark ocean. If there was a predator or a bird flying above them, those dark feathers will help them camouflage with that dark blue ocean. And the light feathers below help them blend in to the light sky. If there was a fish underneath that the bird might be trying to eat, it might not see the seabird above them because of those light feathers. So this is a cool physical adaptation that seabirds have that give them an advantage to living in their environment. They are able to camouflage to help them better survive in the ocean. Awesome. Again, this is a picture of an albatross, and this can sometimes be seen here in Morro Bay. So we just learned that seabirds have extra feathers compared to typical land birds, and they have a cool color pattern to help them camouflage with their environment. The above feathers are dark and the below feathers are light. What other type of physical adaptations do you think seabirds have? Think back to that Atlantic puffin picture, those observations that you made. Well, another adaptation that seabirds have are webbed feet. Nice job. If you saw that on the Atlantic puffin, they have flexible webbed feet. And those flexible webbed feet help them become powerful swimmers in the ocean. That's a really cool physical adaptation that seabirds have to survive in their environment. Have you ever seen a diver put on flippers? Well, seabirds have already built-in flippers. They don't need to put flippers on like we would. They already have them. And those help them with swimming efficiently in the water. You might notice it if you've ever tried to swim with your normal feet versus swimming with flippers, how much easier it is to swim with those flippers. So seabirds have extra feathers, have a cool color pattern, and they have webbed hind feet. Another physical adaptation that we see is, drum roll, are their wings. Their wings are a little bit different than typical land birds. Give you a moment to check out this picture. This is of a cormorant. And this bird can be seen in Morro Bay. Seabird wings tend to be longer and they tend to narrow down to a point. You can see it from this picture on your screen. That type of wing shape helps them to fly easily for long periods of time. So they're able to fly effortlessly. Really cool. So we learned about feathers, webbed feet, and wings. The last physical adaptation that we'll be talking about is a type of adaptation that you might not think of. It's not very visible, it's very hard to see, but it is still there and it helps them survive in the ocean, and that is seabirds have salt glands. What is a salt gland? Well, I'll explain this picture in just one moment, but a salt gland helps filter out the salt from their food and water. If I told you that seabirds could drink seawater, would you believe me? Well, they do. Our bodies are unable to handle all that extra salt, so we can't drink salt water. But seabirds have that adaptation that allows them to drink salt water, and that is their salt glands. The salt glands take away that extra salt that is in their food and water. And they're out at sea for really long periods of time. So it makes sense that they don't come across that fresh water very often. So they still need a water source, and what's better yet than just the salt water. So they have salt glands. And they're located on the head of a seabird, and you can't really see it because it's kind of internal, but that extra salt is actually visible in this picture, and it is that little water droplet that's right here. I'm gonna circle it. You can kind of see that water droplet. That's that excess salt, that extra salt that they don't put into their bodies, that salt gland filters out. It's a really neat adaptation that seabirds have in order to live out at sea. Nice. Okay, so we just learned quite a few physical adaptations about seabirds. We learned that they have extra feathers, and those feathers have a cool color pattern that help them camouflage. That's about 2 different types of adaptations. They have webbed feet that make them efficient swimmers, and they have long wings that taper out to a point so that they can fly for a really long time, for a long period of time, and they have a salt gland that allows them to drink and eat in their ocean environment. Those are 5 different physical adaptations. But they don't only have those types of adaptations. They have a few more that are related to some of their behaviors. Some of the things that they do give them an advantage to living out at sea. And there's about 3 that we are going to be covering. And they live in this unique environment, so sometimes they have unique behaviors to survive in the ocean. And one of those is that seabirds, are long-lived animals, meaning they live for a very long time compared to other birds. There are even some cases of seabirds living up to 50 years. That's a really long time for a bird. 50 years. That's amazing. So they live for a very long time. Why do you think that is? Well, they live in a changing environment. The ocean changes constantly. And because it changes, those birds need to learn how to adapt, how to behave accordingly to those changes in their environment. Maybe you can think of ways their environment change. I'm thinking about ocean temperature. Temperatures can change in the ocean. Ooh, a bird just flew right by me. I'm thinking of weather patterns. Those are changes in their environment. And food sources. Those are different as well. All of those change throughout a seabird's life. And so having that long life allows them to learn how to catch their fish in catch their food in those changes, and allows them to successfully raise their young. So that's why those birds are long-lived animals. Now, the second different type of adaptation is breeding. What is breeding? Or why would they come to land? I guess that's what I should start with. Why do you think they would need to come to land if they get their food source from out at sea? Well, they come to land to nest, breed, and raise their young. So, these birds come to land. Usually they go to faraway places like islands, but they can be seen on coastlines and rocky cliffs to nest, breed, and raise their young. And seabirds do an interesting nesting pattern that we called colonial nesting. And it looks like this. A lot of seabirds group together when they come to land, when they nest, breed, and raise their young, and they form colonial nesting. And some of those nests can have thousands and thousands of birds. That's a really cool shot, really cool picture of that type of behavior that seabirds do. And seabirds take a lot of time to raise their young, especially compared to land birds. And they do that in order, they take a really long time to raise their young, and they do that because they have fewer young compared to land birds. So they need to take extra care and make sure that their young truly survive in their environment. They usually have only one egg or one chick at a time. Whereas if you see nests in trees or on land, they usually have multiple eggs, but that's not common for seabirds. Seabirds usually have about one egg. And a seabird fledgling, which is a bird that is learning how to fly, tends to stay with its parents for a longer period of time compared to those land birds. So seabird fledglings can stay for a couple months with their parents to learn how to survive in their changing environment. So that's a really important adaptation that seabirds have in order to build up their population and to survive in that changing environment that we talked about just a moment ago. And another cool behavioral adaptation that we're going to learn is their diet, right? Their diet is going to be different than other birds that we see when we're walking around. Their diet includes fish, squids, and crustaceans. Those are some of their food source. And that is really important, right? Because seabirds spend most of their life out at sea, and so they have to eat something, and those are some of the critters that they eat. And that is a different type of adaptation that allows them to live out at sea. So we learned a lot about the different physical and behavioral adaptations that allow seabirds to survive in their marine environment. Some of those adaptations are physical, right? Body parts that we talked about, those feathers, those webbed feet, that salt gland, and they have behavioral adaptations, right? The colonial nesting, they come to land only to nest, breed, and raise their young. They also live for a really long time compared to land animals, and they also eat fish, squid, and other marine animals. So that's awesome. We got to learn a little bit more about that. And now I want to talk about two special seabirds that live in Morro Bay. These seabirds can be found in other locations, but I especially really like them. And that is the brown pelican that can be seen here in Morro Bay, and also the western gull. We're going to talk a little bit about these two awesome seabirds that can be found in Morro Bay. All right, the first one that we're going to talk about is the brown pelican. This guy right here, this is my stuffed animal version of it. And maybe you recognize this bird from a movie. I'm thinking Finding Nemo. That's right, there is a brown pelican in Finding Nemo. That's where you might recognize it. But this is what a brown pelican actually looks like. And they're pretty awesome seabirds. And you can see some of those body parts that we just talked about in this picture. The brown pelican has a very long wing, and you can kind of see those webbed feet. So this seabird, or this brown pelican, has a few of those adaptations that we talked about in this picture. You might also know that brown pelicans have a big throat pouch, and you can see it by right here. Gonna draw some arrows. That's the big throat pouch. And these are amazing seabirds that can be found in coastal marine habitats as well as estuaries. And we are currently in an estuary. This is Morro Bay Estuary that you are seeing on your screen. An estuary is where fresh water and salt water meet and mix, providing a unique habitat for different animals and plants. So that is where you will find a brown pelican. But brown pelicans are unique, and they have different adaptations that allow them to survive in the marine environment. You can see a brown pelican soaring high in the sky and diving down into the ocean to grab their food. They actually can be seen soaring in the air about 65 feet. That is really tall. It's kind of hard to picture how tall 65 feet is. So to get a better idea, I want you to picture a telephone pole. If you can think of what that is. I think have a picture of it right here. This is what a telephone pole looks like? Well, a standard telephone pole is about 36 feet tall. So 65 feet is 2 telephone poles high in the air. That's a very tall distance from the water. So brown pelicans can be seen soaring at 65 feet and then dive down headfirst into the water. I don't know about you, but I would be very scared to jump into the water at 65 feet. I just don't know if I would be able to do that. But brown pelicans do it with ease. And to get an idea of how they do that, let's do a quick activity of wiggling around. Maybe get some of that energy out that you have. All right, I'm gonna pretend to be a brown pelican, and I'm gonna open my wingspan, and I'm gonna soar and glide on top of the ocean. And as I'm looking down, I'm gonna see a school of anchovies. Yum, that's something that I want to eat, and I'm gonna dive down. So I'm gonna move my arms and make it as part of my beak, and I'm gonna dive head down first into the water. And as I go into the surface of the water, I'm gonna open up my beak, open it up, and scoop a whole bunch of water. So this is my big throat pouch now. It is filled with about 2.5 gallons of seawater. So it's really big, right? But I don't want all that seawater, so I'm gonna squish my throat pouch and make it all flat. So now I no longer have salt water in my throat pouch. All I have are those anchovies that we saw when we were gliding in the sky, and I'm gonna gobble them up. So that's kind of how a brown pelican soars in the sky and dives down to get food. Thank you for joining me in that quick activity of kind of wiggling around. I really think that brown pelicans are awesome, and they're just a neat seabird that you can see here in Morro Bay. But there's also one other seabird that you will see if you ever visit Morro Bay, and that is the western gull. It is this western gull. A lot of you might recognize this bird, but not know that these are considered gulls, or call it a seagull. Well, this particular seagull is called a western gull, and it is also a seabird. And I have a closer picture of what a western gull actually looks like, not just my stuffed animal version. So this is a picture of a western gull, and you can see some of those physical adaptations that we talked about. It has those dark feathers above and light feathers below. So that's really cool. That awesome color pattern that are associated with seabirds. This seabird is a little bit different. It's a big, bulky bird, but it does not gather its food like the brown pelican. This is an opportunist feeder, meaning it takes every opportunity to get food. They do not have the same type of beak that a brown pelican has. So you won't see a western gull soaring high up in the sky and diving with their head below. They tend to get their fish right from the surface of the water, or you can see a western gull stealing food from other animals. Actually, you can see a western gull stealing food from a brown pelican. Yeah, that's right. You heard it. They can be seen stealing food from a brown pelican. And unfortunately, because this bird is an opportunist feeder, meaning it takes every opportunity to get food, sometimes it can even be seen picking at trash, which is very unfortunate, and that is one reason why we should remember to pick up after ourselves so seabirds like the western gull don't go through our trash or eat it. Another cool characteristic that the western gull has that not only helps us identify that it is a western gull, but it is also used as a way for baby western gulls, baby chicks, to let their parents know that they're hungry, and that is, oh, my bad, there we go, is that red dot that is on their lower part of their beak. So this is a cool characteristic that allows birders or people like you and me or you and I to know that this is a western gull, is that red dot, but it also allows the chicks to let their parents know that they're hungry. And they do that because those chicks actually peck at that mark. They go beep, 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 and then the parent knows, oh, my baby is hungry and I'm going to feed it. So that's a really different characteristic that, or different adaptation that western gulls have compared to other seabirds or birds in general. It's a unique adaptation. So we learned quite a bit of information about seabirds. We learned a lot about the physical adaptations, we learned about the behavioral adaptations, and we also got to learn about two of my favorite seabirds that can be found in Morro Bay State Park, the brown pelican and also the western gull. But why is it important that we learn about seabirds and how unique they are? Well, seabirds play a really important role in letting us know how healthy their marine environment is. They go where their food source is. So if there's abundance of their food source, if there's a lot of fish, then we expect to see a lot of seabirds around, meaning that the environment is pretty healthy. And they also are food source to other animals. So it's really important that we help protect the species, help them or keep them safe. So that's why we want to learn about seabirds, because hopefully we grow a bigger appreciation for these amazing creatures that can be found here at Morro Bay and on Earth in general. And there are a few ways that we can help keep these species or help keep these seabirds safe and healthy. And there are a few things that unfortunately humans can negatively impact seabirds, and one of those main ways that we can harm seabirds is by disturbing them. Disturbing them meaning that we get too close to a seabird and that seabird has to take extra energy to fly away. Seabirds are also scared of strangers, just as if somebody stepped into our own home. I would feel very scared and I would want to leave. So seabirds react the same way as us. But unfortunately, because seabirds come to land to do those three activities that I mentioned, to nest, breed, and also raise their young, if they leave that land, they leave their nest and eggs and chicks, and that means that those little those chicks are vulnerable to the weather and even predators. They're exposed to the cold temperature and they don't have those physical adaptations yet. They are very vulnerable to those changes in their weather. And there's also predators that can easily get to those eggs and chicks if the parents aren't around. And unfortunately, if it's an extreme disturbance, a whole seabird colony could disappear. That is an extreme disturbance case, but that can be very dangerous because you're leaving a lot of young birds exposed to that harsh weather and those predators. And sometimes those seabirds will never come back to that land because they were so traumatized. They don't want to go back to it. So that means they have to look for another area to do those important activities, those important behaviors that help keep their population up. So we want to do our very best to stay away. So what can you and I do to help to keep those seabirds healthy? We can minimize disturbance. So we want to be respectful and mindful and keep our distance away from seabirds. Can you think of something else that seabirds could you think of something else that seabirds might not want to see in their habitats? If you were thinking trash or pollution, you are right. Seabirds don't want to see trash. they sometimes can mistake that trash for food source. So it's really important that we pick up after ourselves. And if we're going on walks, we can also pick up trash that other people have left in a safe manner. That's a really important role that we can do in keeping seabirds healthy. And not only seabirds, but all wildlife in general. That would help improve every environment. And a healthy environment means healthy wildlife and healthy people. So picking up after ourselves is a really important part. And even if you're not close to the ocean, leaving trash in an area is not proper can still end up in the ocean. It can travel through those streams and creeks that live near you and end up in the marine environment where there's a diverse population of seabirds, birds, and other wildlife. So those are two key ways of helping to keep the seabird population safe and healthy. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's home learning program about seabird adaptation. I hope that you learned a lot about how these amazing birds survive in the marine environment. And maybe you can create your own seabird and kind of draw all of those different adaptations that we talked about today. I would love to see that, and you can show your awesome seabird creations by drawing it and then tagging us on your social media pages or using the hashtag #HorseFanArt. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and hope that you're continuing to stay safe and healthy and that you enjoyed this program. Again, my name is Mariana Perez, and I am super happy to have the opportunity to share the awesome wildlife that lives in Morro Bay State Park. But there are a lot of other cool wildlife that live in other state parks in California. So continue to check out the Port's website to sign up for all of those awesome programs. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.